Today we're talking about everyday routines that shape how we feel about ourselves, like grooming, bathing, and getting ready for the day, and why those routines help preserve identity as we age. So stay tuned and we'll get into it. Hi, Dr. Lakelyn here. Welcome to Caregiver Chats. I'm a gerontologist and caregiving advocate with Home Instead, and I'm so glad you're taking the time to join me. These conversations are a space for learning, reflection, and support. And I invite you to subscribe to Caregiver Chats on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, I love hearing from you. You can email me anytime at caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. As we age, everyday tasks like bathing, brushing teeth, styling hair, or even applying makeup can become more difficult due to mobility changes, arthritis, balance issues, and cognitive changes. But these routines are about more than hygiene. They're tied to identity, confidence, and dignity. That's why I'm excited to welcome occupational therapist Lindsay DeLong to the show. Lindsay is the founder of EquipMeOT, a platform and YouTube channel dedicated to helping people learn how to install, assemble, and use home-based medical equipment. With more than a decade of experience working in rehabilitation and home-based therapy, Lindsay is passionate about helping families bridge the gap between the hospital setting and home environment. Her work focuses on making adaptive tools and equipment easier to understand so individuals can live more safely and independently. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Lindsay, welcome to Caregiver Chats. I am so glad you're here today.
It's my pleasure. I'm super, super excited for this conversation.
Me too. Well, I thought we'd start by having you share a little bit about yourself because you've had a really interesting career working both in rehab hospitals and kind of home-based settings. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey as an occupational therapist and what inspired you to create your EquipMeOT organization?
Yes, absolutely. So I graduated from OT school all the way back in 2012 and got my first job in my dream setting, which was inpatient acute rehab. And I was working predominantly with traumatic brain injuries and multiple trauma recoveries. So I had a kind of a deep dive, I almost call it my fellowship, into some of the most complex recovery situations. Wow. And in that time, I became really fascinated with the depth of problem solving that you have to do on an individual basis. And I was doing so in a hospital setting, which was great because it was very controlled. I didn't know what I didn't know about the individual's experiences upon leaving the hospital. But I knew in my heart, I was like, there's more. There's more to this process. And as an OT, we really do focus very much on the individual and their kind of whole lived experience, not just that snapshot you see in the hospital setting. Yeah. And so I transitioned for 3 or 4 years in, I transitioned into the home health setting where I felt like I could really get a deeper understanding of what it is to live with, whether it's a temporary disabling event or, a long-term change in your physical, cognitive, psychosocial, whatever it might be, and how that could be dealt with via modifications, adaptations, therapeutic intervention. And so I did that for 7 years and worked predominantly actually worked with everything. I think when you do home health, once you get into the home, you just kind of become an expert in being a chameleon. And so I worked in the age range of 18 to 106 was my oldest patient, and pretty much every kind of event, from strokes to head traumas to hip replacement recoveries, and just learned so much. And then the pandemic hit, and home health became a very difficult place to find consistent work because people did not want people coming into their homes and potentially exposing their loved ones. And so I started finding myself at home a lot with my thoughts, and I started making videos of information that I wished every single person had before I stepped foot into their home. I said to myself, like, if they could just have how to use their tub transfer bench or how to put on their shoes without bending, if they had that information, they wouldn't always need me to come in. They could prevent an injury. They could prevent a painful situation. And so I just started making videos, and it took off. And EquipMeOT was born of that necessity and that interest in really sharing openly information that I think everybody deserves to have. Because as we always say, it's like we're borrowing non-disabled bodies temporarily because we all will eventually experience something that will challenge us in unique ways, whether that's a pregnancy, whether that's an injury, whether that's an illness, whether you're on the caregiver side or the recipient of that unexpected or expected event. It's really valuable to have that kind of information to keep you going forward. So that's what we do.
I always love hearing people's journeys, one, but I also love that you are helping people to, live their best life essentially in whatever circumstance they find themselves in. And I think that, you know, occupational therapy, not many people I think understand that. They hear like PT, physical therapy, and they're like, oh yeah, I get that. But what is occupational therapy? And so I think that that's helpful that you kind of explain. Is there any kind of additional definition to occupational therapy you want to throw in there
Absolutely.
since we're talking about that
Sure.
today?
We're pretty used to it. When we start OT school, they tell us to prepare our elevator pitch because most people don't know what we do. And they tell us, I already have a job. I don't need a new occupation. So when we use the term occupation, we think of it as any activity you do in your daily life, whether that's an essential activity, like a daily living activity, like getting dressed or brushing your teeth or eating your meals, or if it's a broader activity like being a parent or driving a car or being an employee. Those are all these areas that make up a human life. And OTs are incredibly skilled in identifying the important things and figuring out ways to keep individuals engaged in those vital activities. So we always joke that the PT will teach you how to walk, the OT will teach you how to dance. So it's really
Ooh, I like that.
we pair together extremely well, and we work in tandem with all the other allied health professionals. We're the experts in what makes your daily life and broader life tick, what makes you you. And that's why I love it so much.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Well, it's so refreshing to talk to people like you who are so passionate about what they do. And it's inspiring and invigorating. And I think it's a perfect segue really into our conversation today because we're talking about kind of personal care routines. And that is so vital to who we are as a person. Like I think about this last week, my family, we had a lot of illness in our house. And so there was a lot of like pajama wearing, not a lot of showers happening. So this week when Monday rolled around, I got to shower and like put on my clothes and a little bit of makeup. I felt like a new person, you know? So our daily routines are really important to all of us. And I think as we age, that doesn't go away, but you start to maybe experience some challenges. So I would be curious to know, really, from your perspective, Lindsay, as an occupational therapist, like how do these daily routines contribute to a person's like dignity, confidence, and really just emotional well-being
Yeah.
as we age and as we go through life?
Well, I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said well-being. It's a sense of your personhood to have access to what feels like often a very much underappreciated part of our day-to-day life, which is those, we call them the activities of daily living, but those include things like being able to put your favorite, moisturizing cream on your face and body, or brushing your hair the way you like it, or blow drying your hair. These are all seemingly small tasks that, when added together, create a vital part of your inner self and outer self, how you present to the world and how you feel about yourself. Those two things go in tandem. You cannot separate them. We often would meet people in the hospital who were coming out of a coma. When I would work in acute care, it was fresh out of a coma. They'd come to us and their hair hadn't been washed in months. They were covered in tubes and for the first time in months, they're free of that. And I am now given this great responsibility to reintroduce them to things that made them feel like them. And it's different for every person, but it's that journey of really understanding what matters, what's important. Like my sister and I always joke, my mom will need to wear lipstick every day of her life, no matter what. Somebody must put lipstick on her when she wakes up in the morning because it's part of her daily routine, but it's also how she wants to present. It matters so much. And I will do everything in my power to make sure she has that perfect shade every single day
Yeah.
because I know how much that means to her.
Oh, I think that is, that's so special that you know that piece of information about her, and I think, caregivers, many times it's a family member who's stepping in to support their loved one. They do know their loved one well, and they've maybe watched them, growing up doing those kinds of routines, and so, whether you have known them a long time or even just a short time, getting to know those important pieces about them can be um, a difference maker in that older adult's kind of a sense of self-esteem, well-being. And I know
It's
for caregivers,
intimate.
yeah,
It's
oh,
intimate.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know, caregivers, they're trying to get themselves ready, their person ready, maybe to get out the door. And so sometimes these routines that we so often take for granted, when they start to take longer and you're helping somebody else, it can be so tempting to want to rush them or, just take over and get things done, do it for them. Let's talk a little bit about why in those moments it is important to slow down and try to help and support the person be as independent as possible in these
Yes.
daily routines. Because, um, again, it can be I'm one of those people that are quick to jump in and need to take a moment, slow down, and say, like, how can this person do as much of this by themselves? And then how can I support them?
Yeah. I think the first step is having a very real conversation early and often. If you are a loved one who's going to be taking on a caring role, the sooner you understand the key vital activities for that person that they're going to insist get done every day that mean that much to them because they're different. It's different for each person. I always say assumptions have no place in working with in caregiving. We cannot assume we understand
Mm,
exactly what somebody needs. It has to be a collaborative experience, and that looks different depending on the cognitive faculties that are present and available. It depends on variability in their disease process. Individuals like with MS, for example, can have excellent functionality one day and have really bad days the next. So there's got to be frequent communication to establish which routine tasks, for example, I like to take a shower every single day. That's kind of a non negotiable. But really, ultimately, I need my body washed every single day. So if we have a day where the time is just not there, we skip the hair because the hair takes a lot more time.
mm,
Now we're blow drying and styling. But as long as I get my body washed, if I was not physically capable of doing it myself and needed some assistance with that or needed supervision with that, I could be okay. And so knowing that up front will allow you to get through those challenging moments where maybe time is limited and you'll decide kind of how to shift your energy, not just the caregiver, but the individual's energy to match what's available. So
mm.
identifying those quintessential tasks that are like non-negotiable, non-skips. Like we have to do these. And I'm going to take a deep breath knowing that my role is to support you through those, whether that's to set you up with the right tools and equipment or to set aside more time because I'm seeing that this is consistently becoming a stressful time for us. How do we adjust? Or if it's just having open conversations. I always say so much can be solved by
Mhm.
asking questions.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the ones we often skip first is we assume, we don't ask the questions, and we all end up frustrated. So starting with that and then kind of moving forward with a flexible but you know, clear plan of action about those daily routines. Whether it's the morning, the midday, or the evening, there's always stuff that comes and goes in those times that can add stress. But if you have that first part, you'll be in much better shape.
Gosh, those are such helpful tips. And I think you're right that communication is where so many aspects of caregiving have to start, not just these personal care routines, um,
Absolutely.
but so many conversation or so many elements of caregiving. Having that open conversation can be so helpful. And you've touched on a few already, Lindsay, of the common challenges that we experience as we get older that might impact our personal care routines. So are there anything specific that would be helpful for caregivers to understand that might make, those little things that we do every day, like brushing our teeth or styling our hair, more difficult as we get older?
Absolutely. I think one of the main things that we find is that because change doesn't happen suddenly for the most part, it usually, in most aging scenarios, happens a little bit over time. And so one of the big things is a reduction in overall energy. So we
Mm,
have this model called energy conservation, and everything about this model is focusing on people's energy flow. And as we get older, we tend to have a little less energy, and we certainly have less energy to spare. So being efficient with our use of energy and realistic is a great thing to start to understand. One of the big ones is just sitting down. Most people do their morning routine or their kind of self-care routines standing at the kitchen sink or the kitchen bathroom sink. And they stand at the bathroom sink and they brush their teeth and they comb their hair, they put on their makeup. If they're so fortunate to have a vanity, maybe they sit for that part of it. But if you are finding that and likely most of us have experienced fatiguing events, if you're recovering from an illness or whatever, you may be like, man, I could sit down and do this. Create a new routine where the activity is done seated. There's great little
mm,
stools you can put into place. And the sooner you implement this, I always recommend start these types of small modifications before they become essential modifications. Make them
great
part of
tip.
the routine sooner than later. I myself can get lightheaded after I shower as I have borderline orthostatic hypotension. So my blood pressure likes to drop after I'm in a really hot, warm shower, which I love. And then I get out and I'm like, ooh, I can feel that. So I bought a collapsible stool that I keep in my bathroom, and I can sit as a 39-year-old person who's aware of my body. I can sit and do that. That's something I can carry from now through the rest of my life. So having just simple little modifications like that to really conserve energy is a fantastic and kind of universal place to start.
I love that tip, and it is so seemingly simple and easy, and I know that, it might take a little bit of an adjustment, especially if you're used to standing, but having that seated or that comfortable seat in the space, can really go a long way. I think that
It
that is
can.
such a great tip. And in addition to maybe noticing fatigue in, maybe the person you're caring for? Are there other signs that a caregiver can look for that might indicate, okay, something about our routine needs to change,
Yeah.
in addition to those energy levels?
If they're taking longer to do basic tasks, it's often an indication that that task is either causing them discomfort or they're lacking certain muscle structure, whether that's due to arthritic change or just simply reduction in overall strength over time. Again, these things typically happen slowly over time, and you don't notice it until it's all of a sudden taking 45 minutes for something that used to take 10. But over time, it
Mm,
was like it took 15 minutes. It took that. So if you can kind of catch it in that mid range. A big one is arthritis, which often
yeah.
starts to impact individuals' willingness and ability to grip and to sustain movement. A big one is hair care. For individuals who are brushing their hair, if they have shoulder pain or grip strength issues, that activity over time becomes pretty unbearable. And you may see it reflected in taking longer to do it or just kind of skipping it. And you'll see a
Mm,
person who's traditionally always been well kept starting to present a little bit more disheveled. And it could be sometimes we jump to conclusions about it, but the reality is it's uncomfortable or they don't have the capacity. So we'll implement things like a long handled brush or comb so that
mm,
if they've got shoulder issues, now they can do that activity without extending the shoulder at all. Women who go through menopause, there's a high correlation between that and frozen shoulder.
wow.
Frozen shoulder can be devastating for basic upper, from the neck up care. Things like a long-handled scalp scrubber in the shower to be able to really get into the scalp. So if you're noticing things like excessive dandruff or a lot of individuals will have greasier hair, and it's because they can't reach to get up there. But it's not often
Mm,
we watch our loved ones bathe, nor do
yeah.
we ask them about it unless there's obviously a problem. So noticing little changes in how effective their hygiene activities are. We see it and we can start skin. We notice that, like if they're having a hard time opening jars and containers, they're not getting their
Oh,
moisturizer on, and we'll notice their skin is looking chapped or exceptionally dry. And so noticing and asking can be the first step, or just follow along and be like, I'd love to see how you're doing your morning routine. Can you take me along on that? And then you can make small changes to that routine to make big differences.
So again, so many great tips. And I love that you have some products that you're
I
showing
do.
because I'm a visual learner.
I
So
got a
that is
pile.
that's so great. Yeah, I'm sure if we turned your camera around, there'd be all sorts of items
Yeah.
behind you or in front of you.
Yes.
Um, that is so helpful in being able to identify the ways or in which maybe a little extra support can help the person, maintain their independence and dignity. And I love that you've shown a few little tools. I'd be curious to know specifically about like the container opening because I think about how many products I use on my face and all the little jars and creams and little pumps. So, are there any just quick little things you can do for that type of care?
Two things I have sitting in front of me right now, but one of them is actually brand specific. So this is a beauty product called Tilt. I don't know if you're familiar with Selena Gomez. She has been diagnosed with lupus and has created a brand also called that's got what's her beauty brand? I'm blanking on the name of it. It doesn't matter. But they've all kind of entered this space in creating accessible product packaging. So this one has a magnetic lid with this oversized, this is a lipstick, beautiful shade too. But it has this kind of oversized handle, very soft touch, and a magnetic top that pops on and off with great ease, replacing your regular ones that take a lot more grip strength. This takes almost no grip strength whatsoever. So you can do a
Wow.
product switch, but I know like my mom would never. So I like to use products like this. This is called Dyson, and I buy it by the gross. As you can see, it's a sheet of extremely sticky double-sided silicone. Dyson is spelled DYCEM. Something as OTs, this is like our secret weapon. We use this on everything. But what it's great for is adding grip. So I cut a little strip of it, and it's used like a jar opener. If you've ever had one of those sticky jar openers,
Yeah.
but it can be underneath an item, so you can press down into it and hold it in place and turn it. So if you've got one hand, maybe a stroke recovery where you have some weakness or hemiparesis in one side, and opening jars one-handed, good luck. So using something like this, you can put it on the surface. You can also cut a big sheet of it, lay it out so all the items can be laid out on the surface and they're not sliding around. You're not bumping them and having them spill or knock over. So something as simple as this double-sided sticky silicone can make such a difference. If you want to go non-medical with the double-sided sticky silicone, all you have to do is type into the Google or Amazon or wherever you buy your products. This is grip tape for tennis rackets. Grip tape for tennis rackets can come cushioned or not, but it's the same concept. It's this sticky, grippy, water resistant. So if you get it wet and dry it, it's still just as sticky as before. It's not going to leave any residue behind. You can put this on the lids of items. You can build up a lid. You can use things like, this is called cylindrical foam. You can put cylindrical foam on your favorite makeup brush and build up that handle. So I'm not having to grip down and pinch hard. I can keep an open hand. These all seem like small changes, but when you do it on multiple things that you're using every single day, it makes a huge difference. So these are just a few of them that I use a lot.
Wow. I would have never thought tennis racket tape could be
Yeah.
used to help you grip your products better. Gosh,
Of
the more
course.
you know.
The more you know. Yes.
Well, and I know I want to continue to do some of these like product specific or activity specific tips. But one thing I did want to bring up that families sometimes can get overwhelmed by this daily care routine, and sometimes these activities can be often intimate. You talked about how we often don't sit in the shower and watch how our loved ones bathe. That doesn't happen. And so then when somebody does need that help, having maybe your adult child in there helping you or even your spouse, that can feel intimidating or like an invasion of privacy. And so
Yes.
I would love to talk a little bit about, how can we maintain that dignity when we're helping with maybe more of those sensitive topics. And then too, sometimes I've talked to families who have said, we actually decided to kind of outsource that activity that's very personal to a professional service like a home care or a bath aid. So maybe we could talk about it from kind of those two perspectives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's super important that that's a conversation. Again, I advocate for these conversations early and often. Always understanding what your loved one's preference is before the need is even there. I've had these conversations with both my parents. Would my dad be comfortable with me or my sister helping him with bathing if he were to need help? And his answer was a resounding no. My mother, on the other hand, said, go for it. I could care less. So understanding those, and like, they're nowhere near needing that assistance, but I know when we get to that point, we've already had that conversation. So again, if you're beyond that now and you're already in that process of caring for somebody and you're finding that there's some sticking points where there's resistance or discomfort, that's okay. You as the caregiver have done nothing wrong, and they as the individual receiving care have done nothing wrong. We all have levels of comfort. And I think it's really important that we understand and respect those barriers and boundaries to give people, sometimes that's all it takes, is saying out loud, I hear you. This is making you really uncomfortable. I'm not going to force it, but can I suggest we do this? Which, for example, there's products on the market that allow you to bathe somebody without them ever exposing their body to you. There's a product called the Blue Hug. There's a product that actually was developed for camping, which is a wearable like shower item that kind of goes over the body, and it allows you to kind of reach in and under, and you have direct supervision or even hands-on support for somebody who has balance issues where they don't expose any part of their body. Or identifying a seating solution for the shower and say, look, Mom, I'm not comfortable leaving you alone in here because there's a fall risk and I can't bear to have you hurt yourself, but I also know how important your showers are. Let's explore seating solutions together so that I can make sure you get into the shower okay, close the curtain, you remove your clothing once you're in there, and I'm just going to stand behind the curtain. But before you come out, I need you to wrap in a towel and I will help you out. So creating whatever version of this bathing solution, or toileting is another very prominent area of concern for people. But having those conversations, oftentimes the barriers and boundaries start to come down as comfort level and trust comes up. So you really have to get through those initial conversations, those initial experiences. I have a sneaking suspicion I could convince my dad to let me help him in the shower just because I'm a professional. I've been doing this a long time. What I also find is, like you had pointed out, professional versus family. Many people just don't want to put their family into that position, and they'll be total angels for a third party to come through and do it. That's wonderful. If you can afford to do that, if that's available in your area, I cannot recommend enough the outsourcing of activities if it produces that uncomfortable, boundary-pushing relationship with your loved one. It's totally fair and reasonable, and that's why those services exist. I know my mom has taken full advantage of those services with her own mother, even though they've got a comfortable relationship together. It's just helped them to have more of that mother-daughter relationship and not only a caregiver relationship. So it's important to have those conversations and understand.
Yeah, again, this is the theme, conversations, having conversations about these various activities. But I really like the approach you kind of gave an example of, like, let's figure this out together so that the person that needs the support doesn't feel like, okay, you're telling me what to do, you're forcing me into this situation. You're exploring the options together and finding a solution that's working for everyone. And I love those couple products that you suggested. We're going to be linking to a lot of the things Lindsay has mentioned in the show notes, so you can go back and reference that. And of course, her YouTube page has so many great tutorials, which we'll make sure to share the link on. But one thing that, if you don't have the luxury of time of ordering one of those items and like waiting for it to come, also just, I was thinking as you were talking, just strategically place towels, on the person's lap while seated, or one of those towels that Velcro that you can wear kind of like a slip. I don't know the right name for it off the top of my head, but even just like those strategically placed towels. You might have a few more soggy towels at the end of your shower, but that is instilling that dignity and privacy that your loved one might be desiring. So you can go out and order some of these things, but also you might get a little creative with what you've got
Absolutely.
At the ready.
Most of the things I find that people end up really finding the most helpful are things they already had in the home, and they're just going to change how they use them. One of the big ones is bathrobes are your best friend. I recommend for people who require assistance for bathing, you get 2 bathrobes. You have your shower bathrobe and you have your warming bathrobe. The terry cloth robe that has a good absorbent layer to it putting it over immediate, like do a basic dry off and then throw that on. One, it's energy efficient. It's a much faster way to get dry and warm quickly, because getting cold can be really fatiguing and quite painful if you have arthritis, or for people with dementia, it can be extremely distressing to become cold. And that's one of the reasons they avoid showers altogether.
Yeah.
So a terry cloth robe, if you have a towel warmer, I'm just saying.
Amazing. Or your dryer.
Or your dryer. Throw it in, warm it up, put it on them. All of a sudden, you just gave them a spa experience. They're going to be clamoring for that next one. So if you're finding some resistance, sometimes it's a matter of just upping the comfort just a little bit. And all of a sudden, they're more open to the experience. And they're more open to sharing it with you because you've shown them care and, appreciation for you wanting to help them, not just you needing to get this off your list, which is hard to do because we're busy and we're tired. But if you do that little thing for those types of tasks, it'll pay off in the long run. It may be a little more effort, but it's so much value if you're going to be caring for a long window of time.
Oh gosh, I love that tip. 2 bathrobes. All right,
2.
I'm putting it on my birthday list. I'm loving these tips. That's one of my favorite parts about hosting this podcast is all the great tips that we have our guests share. So let's continue on that train. I know you have shared some great tools already, but let's talk about hair care and styling, because you mentioned how that can be very fatiguing. And I there's been moments in my life where I've had sore arms and I'm in the shower trying to wash my hair and I'm like, oh, I got to take a break for a second. So let's talk about that category of tips and tools first.
The simplest first step towards an accessible bathing experience is ditch the squeeze bottle soaps and conditioners and shampoos. Buy you the whole pump top experience, whether those are mounted on the wall, like at a hotel, like a fancy hotel, they have the mounted systems that you can pump top, or just simply buy your shampoos, conditioners, and body washes with the pump tops. That alone takes half the amount of physical strength. It can be done one-handed. It can be done without any squeezing dexterity required. That step alone can prevent people from not being able to access their bathing supplies. The next thing is, if you have bar soap user, put the bar soap in a washing mitt that is hanging so it dries in between uses, but that it's not falling on the floor. Soap on a rope. It's been around forever. We forget about it, but it can save somebody from a dangerous situation of having to bend down and reach. So we're both giving people easier ways to do things, but also creating some preventative care here. We're reducing risk. Hair care is a fun one because if you cannot reach to scratch your own scalp, it's really difficult. I do love the scalp scrubbers, the little handheld scalp scrubbers for individuals with finger pain, anyone with arthritis, so that they can really get in there and give their scalp a good, luxurious lather. It can be so nice, especially if as you age, you tend to thicken and dandruff becomes a problem. You don't bathe as often. So when you do bathe, it's important to use something that gets a good penetrating scrub on the scalp to keep the scalp healthy. But if you can't reach to do that, and up here is not an option because shoulder is limited, a product like this, which actually I invented because of all the patients I was working with who couldn't do that anymore, this bends so that now I can keep my arm at this neutral position, and I have the scalp scrubber, and I can give my scalp a thorough scrubbing. I can put my favorite shampoo right on it, and then I can put conditioner on it and kind of brush it through. So all while keeping my arm down to the side. And then the other side is a body scrubber. So you can fold it the other way and wash the rest of your body with one product.
No.
I love that. It really has been a game changer for a lot of folks who didn't even realize how much they were struggling to do that task. So that's really helpful. So long handles like these I showed earlier are great. I do love a bar soap style shampoo, again, because of the contained all-in-one opportunity. So you're not having to, it's all in one place. Also, this is a weird one. Stay with me though. Pet care products. So we have 10 times more pet shampooing solutions than we do human shampooing solutions. And one of them is the handheld shower head, which is a non-negotiable. Along with the pump tops, a handheld shower head should be in every shower, no matter what, with a handheld shower head holder down low. So if you're sitting, you can reach it. But having a handheld shower head holder with a shampoo or soap dispenser right in it. So that you're just
Wow.
holding it in your hand. The water, the soap comes out. You can turn it on and off. They're in the pet care category. So sometimes it's just a matter
Wow.
of knowing which category to look in and going there. So there's just a few. There's also a ton of options for not having to get in the shower to wash your hair. That's a huge
Wow.
one. So having an inflatable basin that an individual can be seated in a wheelchair or even a rolling chair, any kitchen chair up to the sink, and they have inflatable basins that direct the water down into the sinks, but let you get a really good hair washing without having to go to the salon and without having to get into the tub. So that's another way to make sure that that task of actually cleaning the hair is getting done.
Such great tips. And I love how you are having us think beyond the typical solutions and categories.
You
What
have to.
about blow drying the hair? Because
Oh,
some blow
yes.
dryers are very heavy,
Yes.
and to get it all the way around can be a challenge for some
Yes.
folks.
Can I say that this is going to also go back? I don't have it with me because I loaned it out, but it is also a pet care solution. So blow dryers are often used in dog grooming situations where they have a clamp on. They're called goosenecks. So they're these positional gooseneck metal arms that are clamped to a table, and on the end is the blow dryer, just a standard blow dryer. That way it can be clamped to your counter and really positioned however you want it to be, whether you need it facing forward or to the side. It's adjustable, but those are the cheapest. You can buy them that are not for pets, that are for people. You'll pay about 25% more. So I always tell people, if you want the better deal, go to the pet supplies because there's more competition. But there are lots of holders. There's actually a new one that's gone viral on TikTok recently, which I was laughing because I was like, oh yeah, this would go viral. And it's a suction cup. So it suction cups to the wall. So if you have, or to the
Mm.
pier, so it will, and then so it'll be up here and it'll position down and hold your blow dryer. And this is going viral amongst teenagers and 20-somethings. So to say that this is a problem for just the aging population would be false. We all
Yeah.
deserve to be comfortable when we're doing these tasks every day.
Yeah. Oh, I think those are such great tips for hair care, and hopefully people listening will find them to be so helpful in making that part of their routine easier. Another
Oh, I have
category.
one. I
Oh,
have one.
yeah,
I don't
please.
want to forget this. I don't want to forget this because so many people now have tripods in their house. If you have a tripod, tripods are freestanding and also make an excellent blow dryer holder. And if you're using, if you want to kind of stick it on, you can use something like this, which is a zip tie for like gear tie. You tie it to it. Fantastic. So if you've got to take the blow dryer to somebody in their room or whatever, a tripod works. Chef's kiss. Sorry, I didn't want to leave that out.
No, that's important. I love all of these tips. I know, like ladies are often blow drying their hair, but gentlemen, they have an added activity of maybe shaving or grooming
Mhm.
their facial hair. What about tips for that? I think also, maybe could you talk about it from uh, helping a person stay independent and doing it
Yeah,
themselves, but then
yeah,
also a caregiver supporting? Because I think, again, a lot of these activities we're so used to doing on ourselves, but not used to doing on another person,
yes,
unless you are a hairstystylist or
yes,
a barber. So, any tips from those perspectives
yeah.
on kind of facial hair and shaving?
It's an interesting one because I've learned a lot just by talking to my husband who grows very thick facial hair and understanding how he manages it. Because I had a lot of assumptions about this as a female, and it turns out I was pretty wrong. One of them being that it was an easy transition from a straight razor or like a standard manual razor to an electric razor. And that answer,
Mm.
it's actually some skin types and some hair types do not tolerate the electric circular razor styles at all.
Oh,
It can cause significant irritation, pain. So generally, the assumption of that could be problematic. So understanding the type of facial hair, the texture of it, how the different angles of it, it's much like learning how to do hair on a woman. Men deserve for women to try to learn about how to handle beards and whether they like it trimmed totally smooth, whether they like to leave a little bit of stubble. So again, conversation, this is the theme of the day, understanding the preference first will help you make those decisions on how to modify it. That being said, there are a few products that have come through my door that I love. One of them is the Philips One Blade is the most popular accessible trimmer. It's great it can do it. It has a guard, so you can actually keep a beard short and trimmed, or you can take the guard off and use it to completely shave down. It does not have a circular blade, so it's a much safer option for individuals who have the tendency to become irritated with a circular electric razor. And it's very low cost. It has a really lightweight design and an easy to grip handle. It's rechargeable. That particular model has become kind of the go-to gold standard for transitioning somebody from a manual blade, oftentimes due to the adoption of things like blood thinners, or they have tremors, things that make it unsafe for them to have a straight razor to be able to shave their face without causing potential bleeding risk and injury. We can keep them independent with doing their shaving, and they can do it daily without irritation or problem. We transition them from a straight razor to these one blades versus the circular razors. If there's somebody who's already gotten used to using the circular razor or the circular electric, they're the easiest to they're really quick daily ones. I'm a big fan of the ones that can be used in and or out of the shower. So that you can combine tasks. And oftentimes, again, for energy conservation reasons, sitting at the counter and doing your shaving is separate from your bathing, and it becomes a more prolonged experience. And if fatigue is an issue, being able to do both tasks seated in the shower, I'm bathing myself, I'm shaving, I'm cleaning up all in one place. It saves caregivers from having to do extra cleanup. I don't know if you've ever cleaned little hairs out of the sink, but
yeah.
I certainly have. And it also gives them an opportunity to, if you put a small mirror in the shower, I actually put their toothbrush, their razor, whatever it is, whether it's electric or a manual razor, I put it all in the shower so that it's being done more efficiently. And those small steps can make a big difference. But first things first, you got to understand your man's beard, because they are all different. They're like snowflakes.
That is a good tip. I did not realize. And I like the tip of, combining the activities and trying to do them while seated in the shower. That is such a great tip. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Next kind of category, we have touched on kind of makeup and skincare already with some of those great kind of grippy additives that you can put on like the lids, or you said on the countertop. Any other thoughts on that category of makeup and skincare routines?
Makeup and skincare, one of the biggest challenges is dexterity. Vision loss becomes a very frustrating reality with that. So two things that I often get implemented early is large movable mirrors that can be a countertop level that have the ability to magnify as well as provide extra light. A lot of times individuals are struggling with something that they just don't need to struggle with because they just can't see well enough, whether the lighting in the bathroom's not good. If they're seated, if we're asking them to sit, now all of a sudden the angle with the mirror is wrong and they can't see to put on their makeup. So whether you have a vanity where you can kind of set it up as an optimal makeup hair station, which is the best, that's kind of gold standard if you can make that happen. But if you're just using a bathroom, simply having a movable mirror that has the ability to magnify makes a great gift for those hard to buy for loved ones. And then the other option is considering, again, the tools. So when you're using makeup brushes, when you're using compact poofs, things like that, is how is my loved one or how is the person I'm caring for able to engage with those tools? There's a brand called Guide Beauty, which has actually created something for individuals with tremors to be able to control to put eyeliner on. And it's a design so it rests on the skin while you do it. And there's some really cool products out there that do that type of thing. Tremors is another one where you can add weight. So adding a little bit of wrist weight or weight to the actual item can help to reduce tremors and offer the individual more control, or simply being able to prop the arm on a surface. So again, seated, so that they can prop the arm on the surface for better control while they put on their mascara, their lipstick, their blush line, whatever it might be. So again, small changes kind of starts from the seating, starts from getting them comfortable, and then goes down to those more detailed tasks like how are we engaging with the actual tools And are there better tools on the market for them? And the answer is usually yes. There's always
Mm.
an option, at least in my opinion.
Well, and you know about all the options, which I'm loving. I never would have even thought about the waiting. That
Yes.
is a tip that I feel like is brand new to me. I had a little light bulb moment with that one.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you shared all those tips.
Absolutely. Yes. Parkinsonian tremors, especially the kind of consistent small movement, they call them like low amplitude tremors. Those benefit the most from adding weight to either the item that's being held. So weighted pens, weighted, you can buy, if you just search weighted blank. My grandma's favorite tool, she has pretty significant tremors, are actually these beautiful weighted bracelets. They look like
Oh,
beaded bracelets, but they're made out of very heavy material. She uses them when she eats because tremors while she tries to scoop food to her mouth is devastating. She loses half the food. But with these weighted bracelets, she can actually feed herself and has been able to continue to feed herself. So small
wow.
change, big
Yeah.
difference.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious, would the weighted also be helpful for things like oral care? I know we really haven't touched
Yes.
on that topic
Ugh.
yet, but I would imagine, again, that's holding something, you needing to put it in a very specific place in your mouth.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful there, and any other tips for
Yes.
oral care?
Oral care is an interesting one because there's been a new kind of birth of options that has come out in the last few years. Obviously, we have electric toothbrushes that allow us to be more thorough without being so consistent with our own movements. So I always recommend transitioning to electric toothbrushes when capable. There's also options that were originally developed for children with sensory struggles, which are they look like a mouth guard that goes in the mouth, but they vibrate on a very, very fast speed. And all the individual does is hold them in their mouth. And I'm blanking on the name of it, but I will send it to you so it can go in the show notes. But this oral care tool then just vibrates around in the mouth and cleans the teeth. Now, if you're working with somebody who has false teeth or dentures, that's another area that often gets discussed is like, how do I continue to be able to clean my own dentures if I'm struggling with dexterity, pinch, managing
Hmm.
those little packages that have the denture effervescent tabs in them. And again, there are ways that there are tools now that you can actually set the dentures in and they vibrate and they have little hairs and they actually will clean the dentures for you. So
Wow.
again, being aware, is this a challenge for my loved one or person I'm caring for? And can we intervene with a tool or a technique that just takes that off their plate? A lot of people
Mm.
don't complain when things,
Yeah.
especially the older generations, they tend to just kind of grin and bear it. This is just part of aging. It doesn't have to be. We have the
Mm.
technology, we have access to all of these tools at a very affordable price compared to how it used to be in many cases. And we have the internet that
Yeah.
allows us to search people like me who just spend all day long looking at these tools. So even if it's a struggle of something that you don't think is that important, you can remind people that they don't have to struggle. There are
Yeah.
definitely alternatives.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, we had a dentist on the podcast. So
Mm,
you'll have to, if you're listening and want more on oral care, please check out that episode with Dr. Joy. And she talked about so many things that are
yeah.
related to oral health care. And then we had another conversation about foot care. I feel like I learned so much. And in that conversation, she talked about how a lot of times, oh my, look at that foot care scrubber. I love it. How a lot of times people think that, "Oh, I don't wanna bother the doctor with this bunion on my foot," but that could prevent you from falling. So, again, paying attention as a caregiver to our loved one, their routines, asking questions, get curious, and letting them know, like, "Hey, there are actually solutions. Should we look into them together?" And even if it takes, 2 to 3 minutes off of your daily routine, if you can do that with almost every activity, wow, you've really shortened that and condensed it.
And even if you only get them to buy in on one or two changes, those are one or two things that are now not scary, not painful, not a risk of falls, and doing just those small changes can have massive ripple effects. It's that whole, it's pebble in the water. It's like they ripple out and then they
Yeah.
become more open to other modifications in the future. Yeah, this is my favorite foot scrubber. It suction cups to the floor of your shower
Oh, I love
and it
that.
has little it's like a car wash for your foot and it has one of these scrubbers on it, so it's got a pumice stone, so you can even do that. For people with foot related issues from diabetes, it's life or
Mhm.
death that their
Yeah.
feet are maintained and kept clean. And that becomes a quick one that goes out the window when bending gets hard. So,
Absolutely.
you don't want to have a toe loss.
No, and we don't want to fall in the shower either. Of course not. And you mentioned how, today there are so many products online, but I think it's important to touch on kind of buyer beware. We don't want to scare people, but can you just share a few tips to help caregivers and anyone really that's looking for these products to just search wisely and find products that are helpful, truly helpful and legitimate?
Yes. So one of the big things now is that we do see companies kind of jumping into ideas that aren't fully fleshed out, or they're not being sold. They're actually they don't even exist. They're AI generated, which is really frustrating because it can be really easy to deceive. One of the best things to do is to really dig into, if you're buying on a website that's not an Amazon, a Walmart.com, an established retailer, if you're going to an off-site website, making sure that website is legitimate. And that can just mean as simple as sending it to a few other people. I find that I send most of them to my tech-savvy husband. So if you have somebody in your life who's pretty tech-savvy, have them take a look at it and say, does this look like it's legitimate? We're looking for little flags of like, the item is clearly going to take 2 to 3 months to ship. Small items don't take 2 to 3 months to ship unless they're coming from overseas with no US-based location. That doesn't always mean they're wrong, but sometimes it can mean it's deceptive. Like they're drop shipping from someplace else. So do look for that. Try to use reputable resources. Call. If you're using a company that you're not so sure, but they have contact information, call. If you get a person, you're probably in good hands. If you get a machine and you cannot access a person, put up a little bit of a red flag. Like maybe this isn't everything you hope for. Read the reviews. The reviews, and this sometimes can be deceptive as well, but read the reviews. If there's lots of reviews that all seem kind of the same, be concerned. There should be variability in the reviews. If everyone is in perfect diction and perfect grammar, that might be a problem. We might have seen, so it's frustrating because the manipulation is high, but most products, all the products that I share, I have vetted myself. So finding a person who's a specialist in the area of adaptive equipment, whether it's me or somebody else in your area, to vet the items for you is another super safe way to make sure that you're not getting something that's not exactly what you were hoping for. Amazon is really safe because it has a 100% no questions asked return policy. Asking about the return policy can save you a lot of grief if you invest in items that are a little bit more on the expensive side that may or may not serve you the way you were hoping. So those are some ways you can kind of protect yourself and make sure you're not ending up with products and expenses that you weren't expecting.
So helpful. And Lindsay, if people wanted to follow you, your YouTube channel, your website, where can they find you?
So it's EquipMeOT is the handle for YouTube, and my website is EquipMeOT.com. So it's just me and my husband. We operate this as two real people out of a real office in the middle of nowhere, and we are so happy to receive emails and messaging. I'm also very active on social media, whether that's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. And again, those are all EquipMeOT. You'll find me posting almost pretty much weekly. I post, I try to, and we're constantly finding new items to share.
Well, I really enjoy following you on your socials because you have so much great information to share. And I'm so grateful that you've been with us today, Lindsay, to share your wisdom and your knowledge and your expertise. We could have talked for hours, but we'll let everyone get on with their days and on to those important discussions with their loved ones about their personal care routines and how little adaptations can make such a big difference. So thank you again, Lindsay, for being here and for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and for the work you're doing, making adaptive equipment easier for families to understand. Today's conversation is a great reminder that personal care routines are about so much more than completing the task. They help people maintain dignity, independence, and a sense of identity. To our listeners, if you're supporting a loved one at home, remember small adjustments, the right tools and a little creativity can make a big difference in helping someone continue the routines that matter to them. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another caregiver who may need it. You can always reach me at caregiverchats@homeinsteadinc.com. You can also follow us on social media at Home Instead Inc. for updates and caregiving tips. Thanks for listening, and please remember to take good care of yourself while you care for others. Caregiver Chats is brought to you by Home Instead. If you're looking for in-home care to support you on your caregiving journey, visit homeinstead.com to learn more.